Hello everyone, this is Ronnie, and this is my channel talking about my raw vegan diet and giving you some advice for that. Feel free to subscribe and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about sugar in this episode. And usually, most people see sugar as a very negative thing. Now, whether that's someone who's got no real interest in diet or they've kind of got quite an interest in health and have learned a lot about it. Usually most people have quite a negative viewpoint of it, whether they eat it or not. They usually see it as a bad thing. And I'm kind of curious about this because sometimes I listen to stuff and it's people that maybe aren't so much into investigating health matters, and they talk about sugar, and just I start to realize that a lot of people have picked up misinformation about sugar. And let me be clear about my position, because when I was about probably 20 or 21, something like that, I'd already started to realize that I would binge on sugar back in the day. Usually, whether it was sweets, chocolate, biscuits, cakes, just anything really. A lot of the time it was sweets. I used to buy a lot of like kids sweets. They were really designed for children, but I like them. And all of my peers, I suppose, at that age were getting into alcohol, and I never got into alcohol. I never drank, apart from a handful of occasions. And so I guess I was that was like my vice, was sweets and sugar. And I remember having a birthday party at one point and a friend buying me this big bag of sweets. I just had this reputation as being this sugar monster. But what I would feel is this crash all the time. I'd binge on sugar and then I would crash, and this would happen over and over and over. Eventually I started to make the connection. It took a while to make that connection, but eventually I made that connection. And I just, because I was tired all the time, or a lot of the time I was tired and lethargic, and I thought something needs to change here. And I think that sometimes when you think something's going wrong in your life, it's very easy to try and change the outside. But I didn't think about that. I thought about changing the inside, and I thought it must be something that I'm doing wrong. So I identified sugar and I thought I would experiment with it. And so I had a day or two where I decided not to eat any sugar. And I felt a difference. I felt a very obvious difference. And I basically eventually resolved to give it up completely, because I realised I couldn't really control it. I couldn't just have a little bit, I would just end up having a lot. So I decided to give up completely. So I changed to all like diet versions of the drinks. I obviously changed to eating fruits and fruit juices instead of the normal stuff. That's what I remember. Instead of just normal fizzy drinks, sodas, whatever you want to call them. And I cut it all out. I cut out cakes, biscuits, sweets, chocolate, basically everything. The only things that I would look on the side of packets, and if something had sugar in it, I would cut it out. Now, what I found amazing about that, probably something that most people don't get, is I realised that so many foods had sugar in it. And even things that you don't really regard as being sweet have sugar in it. So, for example, I thought, like, say breakfast cereals. So I wanted to find, sugar-free breakfast cereal at the time. And I looked through all the breakfast cereals, and even the ones that I considered the most bland had sugar in them. So I had to find the ones that didn't have sugar added, right? This was my mindset at the time. And I started to look at the packets of almost everything, and anything that had sugar added, I didn't have it. The only thing I would say is if it was more of a savoury thing, like it was a, I don't know, a pasta sauce or something. If it had sugar added, I would always assume that was a very small amount, and so I would still have like say like ketchup. I think a few things like that I would still have that had sugar in it, but mostly I tried to give up everything, and that was a real learning journey for me. I was like, wow, everything that's sweet basically has sugar in it. I didn't realize that. I thought more things were kind of naturally sweeter, and some of the things that to me were kind of bland had sugar in them as well. And then when I had the thing without sugar in it, I was like, wow, this is really has no flavor and no taste, and would experiment with that. And that's one of the things that got me into raw food a little bit, actually, was because I would find products that were raw or natural or whole foods or whatever, and I would look on those and they didn't have sugar added. They had maybe dates or dried fruit, but they didn't have sugar added, so that passed my test, and I would continue to eat those things. And that probably exposed me a little bit to the idea of raw, natural, whole foods without really thinking about it that much. But that was basically my rule at the time. And the benefits I got from that, I remember giving up sugar, and I remember stuff coming out of my skin, spots coming out. And I remember having a headache, basically all day long headache, which are good signs of, withdrawal or detox, whatever you want to call it. And I woke up the next morning, and it was the first time ever that I really woke up and felt awake. I didn't feel groggy and kind of half asleep. I really felt awake. And that was such a change for me. I'd never really experienced that, and obviously the ups and downs went away. But here was something that was interesting to me that kept me away from sugar. To this day, really, I mean, I don't consume refined sugar, but I'm going to get to that a little bit. There's a bit I want to get to. But I saw sugar as like the devil at that point. I saw that was it, and I gave it up. And there was a thing I realised over the years. There was times when I did have sugar over the years after that. But what I started to connect was the day after I had sugar, very often, I would be depressed. I saw that almost every time. I would have a day when I'm like, I don't feel myself, I feel depressed, I feel disconnected, and I would always remember, oh, I had that thing last night and it probably had sugar in it, right? And I saw that connection so many times, I started to connect depression with sugar. And I don't know if that's a big connection for a lot of people, but I started to make that connection. So that was another thing that kept me away from it, and basically scared of it, because I didn't want to feel that way. But I felt like that quite a lot when I was in my late teens. I felt low in energy and kind of depressed, and I think a lot of it was the diet that I had at the time, which I interpreted as the sugar being the bad part of it. And I stuck to that, and I've really stuck to that to this day. And I remember researching at the time a little bit, looking at, there was, probably still is, a presentation on YouTube called The Sugar Blues or something like that, Robert Lustig. And he basically talked about sugar being bad. And I was like, that's right, And I wouldn't be surprised if he still eats sugar though, but I gave it up completely, and lost a little bit of weight. I remember my skin feeling better, looking better. So they're just the kind of improvements that you see every time you're making positive dietary changes. And that was me for years. And for years after that, because I'd made this huge change of giving up sugar, I thought that was me I'd solved the diet puzzle. I wasn't drinking alcohol, I wasn't smoking cigarettes, I wasn't taking drugs. I was by far the healthiest person in my kind of the groups of people I was hanging around in because of those things. But on top of that, I wasn't consuming sugar. That also made me start to eat more fruit, because I'd still wanted to eat something sweet and fresh juice. But what I found is, even drinking the most concentrated fruit juice never gave me the hit that I got from sugar. I used to get sort of a hit, sort of a high from sugar. I used to consume so much of it that it would almost like it was a drug-like effect. Honestly, I don't really know if that was just super high blood sugar or something. I don't know, but I would be going around in a bit of a daze. And I remember a friend, a guy bumping into me one time. We were talking a bit, and he saw me the next time. He said, "You were so drunk that time that I saw you," and I was like, "I wasn't drunk. I was, I wasn't drunk at all." Um, uh, but either I was probably kind of high on so much sugar or something, or whatever. I don't know what it was, right? But I mean, a lot of people have thought I was drunk over the years, to be honest, a number of times, or on drugs or whatever, or assumed I was a drug addict. I mean, when I was younger, I had really long hair and stuff, so they maybe thought I was into drugs or whatever. So that was my thing. And I remember after that thinking, all this stuff about saturated fat, it's all nonsense. Like, there's no problem with, you know. So I get that perspective people have where they're like, it's nothing to do with animal products. It's nothing to do with, I didn't use words like that then, but it's nothing to do with fried food and all that. It's the sugar. The sugar's the problem. The sugar's the problem. That was my thought. And whenever I was around people, I just saw them eat sugar and I'm like, that's the problem. That's the issue. And I thought I'd kind of solved my health issue, my health things. And in many ways I had, in a way, and I felt better than most people. I looked better than most people, probably looked healthier. But that's not that difficult in the modern world to be healthier than the average person. If you don't smoke, if you don't drink alcohol, and you're at a reasonable weight, you're pretty much healthier than most people. So that's where I was at. Now, I continued to make dietary progressions after that, but I only started to really change my mind on the sugar thing much later on, when I started to realise and research more and learn more, and I realised that the sugar wasn't really the problem. And I think so many people think sugar causes heart disease, sugar causes diabetes, sugar causes Alzheimer's, sugar causes obesity. I think people believe all these things. But the more that I've looked into this, the more you realise sugar isn't really connected with any of these things. And if you go to the different websites connected with these, like charities and stuff, they never say sugar is the cause. They never say, like, you need to cut your sugar out 100%, or they never say anything like that. Sugar isn't the cause of any of these things, never connected with them. Now, an unhealthy lifestyle is connected with these things in general, and sugar is part of that for most people. But sugar isn't the cause on its own. Obesity sure is a cause, and it is an easier way of getting more calories, having more sugar in your diet, for sure. But the sugar in itself, if you isolate it, is not the thing causing the diseases. And what I learned was actually the fat in the diet is more of the problem. You see, even the fact that I was binging on all that sugar at that age probably wouldn't have been as much of a problem if it wasn't for the fact that my diet was also pretty high in fat at the same time. So I had blood sugar, I probably had some kind of blood sugar issue there that I worked out and dealt with myself. But it was really the combination of the fat and the sugar. It's the combination of the two things in high amounts that led me to have those problems, most likely. So the times in the past years now when I'm on a low-fat, raw vegan diet, the times when I've had sugar, which are rare, but there's been times where maybe I've been somewhere and they've offered me a drink, a fruit drink, and I don't know if it's got sugar in it. Probably did have sugar. There's been a few times like that. There's been times when I've experimented with things like that, and there was a time when I stopped. Trying to think. I kind of fell off my raw vegan diet for a while. I'm not sure if I had a lot. I think I did experiment a bunch of times with sugar. I don't know. But I wasn't really addicted to it anymore. I didn't have that desire to eat it over and over and over again. And a lot of people that start eating a lot of fruit, they lose their desire to eat high levels of sugar. So I experimented with it, but I never felt the negative side effects that I used to feel. And didn't feel the crash in energy. I didn't feel the depression the next day. I didn't feel that anymore. So I don't really think sugar is a big problem, but I don't, it's not part of my habit today to consume sugar. I don't have any desire to. I don't want to add it to anything. I did see something recently I might experiment with where a guy had a cucumber and he put sugar in the cucumber and he tasted it and he said it tasted exactly like watermelon. That's the kind of thing I would test as an experiment. But I wouldn't want to do that every day. I wouldn't want to make that my lifestyle or anything like that. But my views on sugar have changed quite a lot. And this is from someone that was kind of a sugar junkie and then was completely against sugar and thought it was the devil, you know. And now I'm just like, it's not healthy. It's not supporting your health in the best way possible. But it's not the cause of any of these diseases, and it's not the thing to focus on. And if you're going to focus on giving something up, I gave up sugar first, but I think you should give up the animal products first. Those are the things that are connected with these diseases. So that's my little spiel for today. Confessions of a sugar junkie. But I was kind of addicted to sugar back in the day, but I've never been able to be addicted to fruit as much as I try. I really try and addict myself to fruit, but it doesn't happen. So I'm always making a choice every day to eat fruit. Now, if you want to ask me any questions about this, feel free to do so below. You can subscribe to the channel if you like. And you can, if you want to learn more about the raw food lifestyle, I'll put my book below. And for coaching information, I'll put a link below for that as well. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in a future episode.